Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Allie Walford, and I am the program director for the Parent Education Network. And today this is being recorded, but it is our Lunch and Learn series. We are very frustrated that we couldn't go live to Facebook right now. And with me, I have our colleague from Miami-Dade, Vivian Nunez. Would you like to say hi to the group?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Vivian Nunez, Instructional Supervisor for ESC.
Great. And so, Vivian, we actually have a clinician from Orange County on board, which I am absolutely thrilled about because, as you know, they are one of the larger school districts also. But we are recording this webinar and we will be able to share it with multiple families. So
Awesome.
a little bit of, go ahead.
Awesome. Welcome.
And we have a mom too who has twins in second grade. So we really appreciate you guys being here. Like I said, I'm a little frustrated that our Lunch and Learn can't go live at the moment, but we will upload the video later on today. Family Network on Disabilities is a what they call a 501c3. That means we are a nonprofit. We get our funding directly from the Federal Department of Education. There's a division called OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs, and they fund parent training information centers throughout the entire country. So Janice, don't go anywhere. On my next slide, I'm going to give you some great information. We are family driven. We were founded in 1985 in someone's living room, just 10 years after ADA and IDEA, which was public law something 142. And now we all know it as the Individuals with Disabilities Act. So as you can see here on the bottom, FND is our parent company. Now Penn, all the way over here, this dark blue that goes up the East Coast, we serve 12 counties now, 4 of the largest counties that are in the state. And so Orange County is one of those counties, and we do a lot of work with them. Today, we just happen to be partnering with Miami-Dade, but we go all the way from Key West up the East Coast to Indian River, and then we take a hard left into the interior of the state, and we have Okeechobee, Osceola, Orange, Lake, and Polk County is our furthest west county. However, at the end of the workshop, you'll see our 800 number. If you are in any of those other counties that are in our state, PSN, the Parent Support Network, can help you, or Poppin, parents offering parents information and networking. They can help you up north in the Panhandle. And then, of course, our Department of Health grant, Family Star, helps our families with medically complex children. So as I said, we were started in someone's living room, and we operate off of that peer model. We all have children with disabilities or ourselves live with a disability. So we're not practicing law or medicine or mental health. We are just sharing our experience, strength, and hope with you in what our journey has been like in special education. So what we do is we provide that information, those resources, and support. And we do that with parents one-on-one. We do that through workshops like this. We do that with our partnerships with our counties. Thank you, Vivian. I love our partnership we have with Miami-Dade. We were recently a big part of the statewide transition conference called Visions. FND was a big partner on that. And we do have a role on the national level, serving the PTIs as a social media technical assistance center. So from one-on-one all the way up to the whole country, FND has its hands in some things. Today, we're going to come much closer back to home, and we're going to talk about the Parent-Teacher Conference and what makes an effective parent-teacher conference. So for whatever reason you are here, we are happy you are here. And I love in person, but obviously virtual, the silver lining has been able to have a much wider reach. But if we were in person, I would say who has had an effective parent teacher conference and what has made it that way, or who has had a really frustrating parent teacher conference and what made it that way. So a lot of different answers would be coming from the audience at that point. Um, if you are not aware, procedural safeguards are really one of the most important parts of the IDEA, that Individuals with Disabilities Act law, in which the IEP falls. So today we are not talking about the IEP. While we have a fabulous workshop on the IEP, today we are talking about parent-teacher conferences, because we believe in conflict resolution at the lowest possible level. So now, me as mom of a 22-year-old, I will tell you that I found parent teacher conferences to be the most effective method of communication. However, there is a great national technical assistance resource center, and by technical assistance, we just mean information and support, and it's called CADRE, the Center for Appropriate Dispute Resolution in Special Education. And they are funded by OSEP also. If you'd like to take a minute and take a screenshot or a picture, their website is at the bottom. So we just kind of put that in there because while we do believe in conflict resolution at the lowest level, we want our parents to know that there is a way to resolve those conflicts that they may or may not have. And that video usually gives us a little bit of problem. So we're just going to bypass that for right now. One of the biggest lessons that I have learned as a mom of 22 years is that every action, even silence, is a form of communication, right? So my mom used to say to me all the time, Allie, it is not what you say, it is how you say it. And even now at 53 years old, I still get that conversation. Our tone, our language, even our breathing. Like if we do a, someone's going to know we're frustrated, right? So we wanted to just remind you that if you are at that parent teacher conference and you are being kind of silent, that silence does show some communication. So if you are like me and it takes you a minute to kind of process things, I will often tell the teacher, if I'm being quiet, just give me a minute to process it. I'm not angry, even though I might be. I don't want the teacher to know that. I'm not angry. I'm just processing the information that you gave me. Uh-oh, I don't want you guys to see that. And so that is a type of communication. When you are at the meeting, and we know, because as the Parent Training Information Center, people do not find us because they are happy. They find us because there's been a breakdown in that communication somewhere, which is why we believe in that conflict resolution at that lowest level, and is why we as parent trainers give that information to families. So you want to be attentive, right? We'll talk about this later on, that it's really important not to be on your cell phone when you're at the meeting. Same for the teacher. Like if the teacher, for whatever reason, or somebody, if you have a larger, some of our conferences, some of our counties call them case conferences, where they're not an IEP meeting, but a lot of the team has gotten together. If someone is, not necessarily paying attention, we like to empower you to say, hey, do you need a minute? Or is that your form of note taking? I'm not really feeling heard at the moment. And that's really hard to do as a parent. It's really hard to do as a parent, especially since many of our parents see the school system as the professional. Vivian, I'm sure you see that in your schools all the time, especially as a diverse culture in Miami-Dade, right? Your parents are deferring to the professionals. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So I found another tool is that checking for understanding. So the one of the accommodations that can be in an IEP is something called repeat, clarify, summarize. And that can be from the student to the teacher or the teacher to the student. And so that checking for understanding is really important. And you may have heard of this phrase from marriage counseling, what I hear you say. That's a great phrase, but because it's been around for a while, it might be a little bit of a trigger. So I often recommend parents find a little bit of a different way to do that checking for understanding with the teacher that they're talking to. A huge barrier that I came up with, and my son's been out of high school for 4 years now, was I only have to do 2 parent teacher conferences a year with you. Now, I wasn't in Miami-Dade, let me qualify that. But I always said it with a smile. Well, I need 4. My son has an IEP, and I know we get those progress reports every quarter. And I would really like to have a parent teacher conference the 5th week of school every single quarter. Well, why did I pick the 5th week? Because that was right after the progress reports came out. And in addition to my son's EBD eligibility, he had some pretty extensive, what they call executive functioning with his organizing. So we spent a lot of time doing catch up and reminding the teacher of the accommodation of extra time and stuff like that. So if he was missing assignments, it gave us an opportunity to get those assignments in. So it is really frustrating, if you are told you've got 15 minutes and you only get 3 questions. That is not collaboration. And I don't think Miami-Dade does that, but I think one of our speakers has said that. How do the parent teacher conferences typically work? I know it's different school by school by school, but typically how would your parents expect that parent teacher conference to look like? Vivian, did you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute it. So, as we're aware, any student with an IEP, parents, if there is a concern and that needs to be addressed, you can meet at any time. If it's a parent-teacher conference, I would definitely bring that up. And I love your idea, Ali, that you mentioned to say and keep in mind right after the progress report, because you want to tackle anything that may be going on in the class. Executive functioning skills comes up all the time in regards to students in middle and high school when they have different teachers at every period. So we want to make sure that, the student learns what is expected in every classroom, and that we're able to tackle it as the courses get more rigorous for the student.
Absolutely. So if you do come up that barrier of a teacher is saying, I've only got 15 minutes for you and it's limited to 3 questions. Um, I It took me a long time. One of the things that I tell parents all the time is I was not like this when my buddy was in 1st grade and I was first learning. My confidence came after much growth and experience. So I would very politely and inquisitively say, well, that's just not going to be enough time for me. What can we do to have a little bit more time? And absolutely, I will have my questions prepared ahead of time, but I definitely might have more than 3 questions. I think that's a really hard line. One of our attendees put that in the chat box. I don't know if you can see that. But I would definitely, kind of volley back to the teacher to see if you can find some kind of compromise. And if there's still that same answer, then, there is that chain of command where you could go to
The
the
program
grade
specialist.
level chair, the program specialist, and the language that I use is it is a benefit to resolve these issues that are not IEP matters. IEPs are held annually, of course, but they're also held when you're doing a change of service or a change of placement. And if you really just want information or data about your child, that can really be done in a parent-teacher meeting or a case conference, and it is a benefit to the whole party. So we're really sorry that that was your experience, and I hope that the advice was helpful. You need a plan, so we talk about this a lot with the IEP, but I think it's important to talk about it with parent-teacher conferences also. Why are you coming together? So I love this particular graphic, and this is called our improvement circle. So what is the plan? Why are we coming together? So in my case, it was one of two reasons. It was either really, really impulsive behavior, like eloping or running out of the room, or unfortunately, room clears, like really, really big stuff, or it was really, really small stuff. Like he did the work, but then it was at the bottom of his backpack, right? Where there was no middle ground for us. So why are you coming together? Think about that plan. And as you create that plan together with your classroom teacher and that team, if it's possible to have the, I'm not sure what you guys call it, a support facilitator, a resource specialist. Who's the person that helps execute the IEP in Miami-Dade? What's their title?
We have a program specialist or a department chair in each school of the LEA.
Okay.
We had that meeting as well.
So program specialist. Like I said, we serve 12 counties, and I didn't get to share from birth all the way through extended graduation at age 22. And that's all 14 categories that are in IDEA. So Penn has a really big lift. But going back to our improvement circle, and I love this because I use it at home also. We actually have, well, we had when they were younger, family meetings, and it really helped develop their communication. So you have your plan, you implement your plan, and then you evaluate your plan. And so part of the plan could be your actual IEP and its goals. So one of his goals was starting his work within a specific amount of time, completing that work in an appropriate amount of time, utilizing that accommodation of extra time if needed, but then most importantly, turning it in to the appropriate place. So if he wasn't turning it in, when we got to that next parent-teacher conference in that next quarter, we evaluated that plan. If there were a lot of missing assignments, then we really need to evaluate what wasn't working in our plan that my son was really struggling with the actual turning in of his work. Now, this could be with any behavior or any activity. I'm just using my lived experience to share my story with you. And then we would improve that plan. So one of the improvements that we had was we did color-coded folders starting in about third grade, the spiral folder, the composition folder, and I think they call it the duo tang, the one with the 3-hole punch. Every subject had a color system. So from third grade all the way through 12th grade, math was blue, because I knew I was always going to be able to find a blue composition folder. The composition books are usually decorative or black or blue. So that was just one of our strategies that we did to improve, and it really helped with his executive functioning. And then we had everybody on the same page. The next thing that we did prior to the parent-teacher conference, because this is only an hour and I know I've chatted a lot already, is we had a meeting. Have a meeting with your child. And here are some sample questions that you could ask your child to get an idea about their perception of their classroom experience. And this can be all the way from K through extended transition. So With my son's eligibility, it was that invisible disability. He was mainstreamed. He was actually at a technical magnet high school that he had to apply and meet all the criteria as his general education peers. But we know that many of our students taking the extended transition or deferment, they may have some cognitive delays. So even though they're older, you need to use the language that's appropriate to your child. So it would be, I think, the most important one. Do you have anything you would like for me to discuss with your child? And as he got older, we really worked on that self-advocacy where he could come directly to the teacher independent of me. And then just to get a little bit of background information, and it very important, not the yes and no questions. Our kiddos love the yes and no questions. You want them to be open-ended questions so you get more than a one-word answer. What is your favorite thing about school? Well, you're probably going to get lunch or recess. Oh, yeah, I really, really love running around too. But like, if we had to talk about your schoolwork, your academics, what's your favorite academic class? What's your favorite elective class? Because you could narrow it down, because our kiddos, sometimes they don't want to talk to us. And then what's your least favorite thing about school? And that would really help you have an understanding, and I wouldn't have those conversations all the time. I would really save them up to those, quarterly conversations. But when they're getting in the, if you happen to have you do the car driving yourself and they're hopping in the back seat and hooking themselves in, not how was your day, so you can hear fine, but what was the favorite part of the day? What book did you guys read today? What type of math skill did you learn today? What do you wish would have gone differently today? Again, did not know those questions when my kiddo was in second grade, but they came pretty quickly. Uh, also knowing who their friends are in school, and students that they may have a little bit of challenge with, because let's be really real about it. Students that have disabilities, they do have a higher tendency to get bullied or to not have a full understanding from a classmate, because maybe that classmate's never met a child like our child, right? So have that meeting with your child, ask those questions. And then the considerations and what you want to think about prior to going into that IEP meeting is your communication. So even if you are having some frustration or some struggles, you really want to keep that positive outward face. We are here to listen to you for anything you need to say. And I didn't say this at the beginning of the workshop, but because we are federally funded, there are no fees for our services. Now, we're not advocates, not going to go into the meeting with you, but I always say, save your anger and your frustration for your parent trainer, your therapist, or your partner, right? And then collaboration. What is going to be the best possible collaboration that you can have with the school? One of the things that I did very early on was I joined the SAC, and I think you guys call it ESAC, right? And so that's the Educational School Advisory Council.
Yes.
Yep. And the whole state has it. Every single school has to have one. And there are specific roles on that council. So there's an ESC parent role. There's a gifted parent role. There's an ELL, an English language learner role. And it does need to be 51% parent. Now, depending on the school my son was at, he went to 5 different schools in his career, maybe 6. Sometimes I joined the PTA or PTO, but it really depended on the school. But that allowed me to be in the environment, so I knew what was going on. So some of that collaboration that I might want to ask, obviously, would be the progress. What kind of progress is my child making? Where are you seeing those successes? Where are you seeing those challenges? Or bring in the progress report directly with you and say, hey, I noticed on this, it says not likely to meet goal. Can you help me understand where we're at with that? um, Activities. They may really be into their art class at school, and you might not have any clue at home. I have two sons actually, and my younger son, when he was a freshman in high school, decided to do football. I was like, "Where did that come from? You're a technical theater junkie. You love theater. You love musicals, and now you're playing football for high school." So asking the teachers, my mom said it really well when I was a kid. She said, I won't believe half the things Allie tells me it happens in school if you don't believe half the things that she tells you that goes on at home. And so that adult communication was really important. Vivian, did you have anything to add to this particular slide before I moved on to the next one?
No, so far this is excellent. I'm even picking up on some strategies for myself.
Oh, thank you so much. And like I said, it is a lunch and learn, so we are trying to keep it brief. You will have our contact information at the end. And one of our participants had a really great comment. The bullying also assesses socialization. So maybe if your child happens to have a social emotional goal about peer interactions, then you could take a look at that and see if that goal is working or if the interventions need to be tweaked a little bit. So thank you for bringing that up. So we have prepared through talking to our child, thinking about our plan, having our questions ready. Well, how should teachers prepare? Well, obviously, we're not going to tell the teacher how they should prepare, but here are some ideas that FND thinks that the ways that we do hope and have found that many of our teachers do prepare for their parent-teacher conferences. And I don't need to read the screen to you. I'll give you guys just a few minutes to look that over. I will bring attention to number 4. FNDUSA.org is our website. We have been around for 35 years, and Penn has held the Parent Training Information Center for South Florida since it was written into IDEA, which I think was like one of the reauthorizations, maybe 87, 89, because one of the pillars of IDEA is school parent collaboration. And I know that that is incredibly important, not only to all the school districts we serve, but to our Miami-Dade partners. And at the end of it, you really want to remember that the overall goal is the student. What is going to be in the best interest of the student? So I think everybody's had time to read that slide. And then how should the parents prepare? Guess what? Looks very similar to the teacher slide, right? One of the accommodations that we did have for my son in elementary school, and yes, absolutely, I understand it is burdensome on the teacher, but we had a daily communication log. With that emotional behavioral disability eligibility that my son had, obviously behavior was a very big concern. So not all students are going to have a daily communication log, but many of our teachers are using Remind or Class Dojo, or even the internal portals that each of the individual districts are doing. So you should already have some pretty free-flowing communication going through. And that really ties into our bullet points 1 and 3. You'll want to discuss the progress at home. Maybe your child, it feels more comfortable at home, and you are reading bedtime stories together for our younger children, and they're just really nailing it. But at school, their anxiety might really ramp up, and they don't perform as well as school. So what I know some of my parents have done is they've actually videotaped some of their activities that their children are doing at home. And not only have they shared that at the parent teacher conference, but they've shared that at the IEP as well. But again, the whole primary goal of a parent-teacher conference is that communication and, keeping an open door with the teacher. So here are our top 10 suggestions. If you are older like I am, you will remember Late Night with David Letterman and his top 10. Be on time. Now, I live in Broward County. I am very close to Miami-Dade. I know Miami-Dade has its own special time zone. And Miami-Dade's traffic is very challenging. And you know what, for our visitor from Orange County, I am learning that Orange County traffic is really challenging as too. Do the best that you can to be on time to the meeting. And that is both for you and the teacher. And like I said, it does require a lot of practice to, for some of us, to feel like an equal member at the table. So if your teacher is, particularly late, oh, well, I think we'll have to schedule a follow-up to this. We had, 20 minutes to talk, but you're 10 minutes late, and can you stay 10 more minutes now, or do we have to schedule another one? So both parties, it's really important to be on time. Taking that notes, I'm in that sandwich generation right now. Even though my kids are older, I'm still supporting them, and I'm supporting my parents. So if I didn't write it down, it didn't happen. And many of us use our phones now. There's a fabulous app called Google Keep. So if you are using a phone or an electronic device to keep your notes, just make sure to tell the team, or the teacher, hey, I'm taking my notes on the phone because it's easier. Like I said earlier, you do want to be positive, even if you're frustrated. You want to highlight the positives that you're seeing from your child and from your teacher. In many leadership conferences, you'll hear something called the sandwich technique, where you lead with a positive, you talk about an area of improvement in the middle, and then you talk about another positive at the end. That sandwich technique works really well at parent-teacher conferences also. Avoiding those distractions. One of the things that I have found myself recently, so not with parent-teacher conferences, but for example, just this morning with Vivian, when we were pre-planning, I was like, hey, my folks are in a high need situation right now. I may need to look down at my phone real quick just to make sure everybody's okay. But if at all possible, you and the teacher will want to avoid any of those extraneous distractions while you're having the meeting. Having an open mind, that is just so important. One of the best accommodations that we had for my son, and there is something called a continuum, so general education, self-contained, and then center schools, where the entire population is all has an IEP, residential and hospital homebound. So my son did the gen ed, the self-contained, and the center school, which was really challenging as a parent, but absolutely the right move for him. And that is an IEP decision. Parents, you're a big part of that. But my example of sharing an open mind was he needed a lot of movement. So in his self-contained class, where there were less students, we used painter's tape, and he got a good 6-foot square of space. And his desk was actually all the way up at the front of the tape. And as long as he stayed within that area that was taped off, that was considered staying in his area. Now, that would be much harder to do in a general education classroom or a classroom that's a little bit crowded, but it is only just one example of being open-minded and having a multitude of ways to think about. Information and data. Data is king, right? Your teacher's going to bring you data about your students' performance. You're going to see that data on the IEP. You will bring that data back to the teacher. Well, I'm not seeing this. I'm not understanding that. You say that he or she is reading, let's look at high school. he or she is in 11th grade, but they're reading at an 8th grade level, what interventions are we providing? Is that double dose of reading working, or do we need to do something more specific? The only way you're going to know that is with that shared information and then asking questions. I'm going to go back to our conversation. You may have heard it called cultural competency or cultural responsiveness. My husband's Jamaican. He is first generation American Jamaican, never asked a teacher a question. It was way, way out of his comfort zone. I know many of our Caribbean friends are in that boat. And Vivian, I would ask you, is that pretty common in the Latino community too?
It was, at least for my upbringing.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe the younger folks are getting smarter and stronger and
Yes, yes, they
having
are.
that self-advocacy.
Yes, they are.
Good, good, good. Because you know what? There is no dumb question.
Oh,
Something I tell my husband rather regularly is, if I ask you a question, it means I don't have the answer or I don't remember the answer. Being objective. One of my other all-time favorite sayings is in sign language, just holding up your pinky finger is the letter I. And I'm a big fan of support groups. So in one of my support groups, we said we use I statements here. And if someone was going, you, there'd just be a real nonchalant verbal cue of I statements, or the very common, if you're pointing your finger at somebody else or pointing back at yourself, right? So trying to be as objective as possible with the information, even if you are upset. And like I said, we are here for you to be upset. We don't mind if you are upset. We'll help you find that positive language and that reframing. We already talked about the sharing of the information and then the development of that action plan. Well, at the end of the day, your IEP is your overall action plan, but is there something in between that needs to be done prior to that annual IEP coming up? And what can you do to help as a partner with that teacher or multiple teachers? When your kiddos get to middle school and high school, I can tell you right now, it will not be one parent-teacher conference. You will have to really make the sacrifice and probably come in like 3 mornings in a row or 2 mornings and meet with half of the team on one day and half of the team on the other day. And as a parent, it was frustrating, but I did, have that grace, and I understood when you get to middle school and high school, those teachers have some pretty big caseloads, right? And you guys, how many students does Miami-Dade have now? Like 400,000?
pretty much.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they keep coming.
And
Ali, you have a question from a parent that said, what is number 9?
oh, what was number 9? Well, let me go backwards. I'm so sorry. The sharing of information. So like we talked about, the going back and forth and that data, getting the information from the teacher, and then anything relevant that you need to share. I did find, having a son with emotional behavioral, I chose not to share the medical information. You're not required, unless they are taking that medication at school, you are not required to share that information. Later on, when we had to start doing the almost like the micro dosing, so a little bit in the morning and a little bit after lunch, and he was taking it at school, then we brought them up to speed. But you can choose what you think will be best for you to share about your child. And that was a really big lesson I learned about parent input, which is a whole nother workshop that we'll have another time. And then setting up the calendar notifications to follow up. Like I said, open house, first month of school. Hi, Mrs. Jones, I would really like to meet with you the 5th week of every school year. Can we schedule that from now? And they were often surprised about that. So we do have,
That's a really important one, Ally. I want to piggyback on that one because follow-up, you set a plan and the follow-up is key because you then want to go back to reevaluating and reestablishing that plan. If it's going well, great. And if you need to reinforce it or change it up a little bit, that's really important. And the message you're giving the teachers is that you are committed to that plan and they invest in that plan as well. They're held accountable that we're going to go back, we're going to meet again, and we're going to revisit. So that
so
one's key.
yeah, no, thank you so much for that. And we did so much better on time than I thought. It is 10 till. So I'm wondering if you could just give, I know we have a guest from Orange County on right now, but since this is recorded and it will be uploaded to our Facebook page, we're going to send it over to Miami-Dade to put on their ESE page, maybe even their parent engagement page. What are some specific recommendations or suggestions of parent engagement that you have for your Miami-Dade parents?
Any questions for me? We also have one parent that said, please do a parent input.
Yes, yes, yes. So what I was talking about before was in our IEP workshop, we talk about present levels of performance, and a parent input is absolutely a present level of performance. So what I did not know early on is the staffing specialist or the ESE specialist or, you know, whatever label your county uses, they would say, so mom, tell me about your child. And they wrote that down as my parent input. And in the beginning, it was all negative. I don't want a room clear. I don't want him to run away from campus. I don't want him to be restrained. At that point, Florida still had seclusion rooms. Unfortunately, my son experienced those seclusion rooms. When I changed my parent input to be much more strengths based, it didn't scare the teacher. I read my parent input and I'd be like, oh my gosh, is my kid, and I wouldn't want to have him. So I talked about those needs that he had. He needed a really big heads up on transition. He was not a student with autism, but that's a pretty common one for students with autism. He really needed to know the why. The why was really important to him, especially when he got into high school. So if you could just give him a little bit of a heads up on the why he has to do something. When he was little, the Pokemon cards, I provided those as reinforcers or part of his token economy. Now that they're older, I've got a little bit different feeling about a token economy, but that really is, you know, is each person's individual choice. But Vivian, what I was saying was, other than the ESAC, what are some suggestions or ideas that you have? I know each one of your schools is different about parent engagement that we could remind your parents that Miami-Dade has.
So we have, as you know, the family engagement group, like you mentioned, the PTSA, and just being involved, asking, communicating with your teachers is key. I always experiencing elementary, middle, and I'm consider my strength is in high school. When I see a parent involved with their students' education and in their IEPs and the meetings and communication with teachers, you will see the student's success, the outcome. So communication is, in my opinion, key in developing plans, and really important that for you to start involving your child. They say involve them when they're 17, turning into 18 adult. No, involve them, ask them questions, make them part of that planning phase because they want to be part of it, and then you want them to commit as well, and all parties involved is a stronger plan. And the self-advocacy skills will kick in for those later years.
Absolutely. And if you are not aware, as of July 1st, last summer, the Florida legislature passed House Bill 173, which actually lowers Florida's transition age to 12. or 7th grade. So we have a fabulous workshop. It's called Diploma Pathways. We're getting ready to get it out in Spanish, but we already have it out in English if you want to look at our Facebook page for that. I am happy to do another closed group specifically on that. A lot of information on that particular workshop, but there's also professional studies, like Vivian said, that the more parent engagement, the better success of the young adult. And you know what? It's hard. I know it's hard, especially if your baby has had that IEP since elementary school. We're tired. We're really tired. But my guy found robotics. And you know what? We were there. We were at the events. We let him stay after school. That meant we had to arrange his transportation because he used specialized busing. My other son, he did the theater and the football. As I shared with you, I did our SAC and our PTA. But the outcome is you're shaping your children to be really fabulous adults, and sometimes I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I think I'm not doing such a great job on that. And literally just yesterday, special weekend for all major faiths, my kiddos, we had a great time, and it showed me that all that hard work was worth it. So this is our group. We talked about it on the beginning. FND is our parent organization. We are PEN, the Parent Education Network. This is our resources. If you want to take a quick screenshot, our website just had a revamp, so they may still be working on some technical issues if some of these slashes don't work. On the next page here, you're going to see our phone number and email. So if you call that 800 number, you are going to get, who are you going to get? I think her name is Sarah. We have a brand new administrative aide in our Clearwater office because we serve the whole state. Sarah will get that to the correct project, and we will be able to help you. If you don't want to talk on the phone and you are more comfortable with email, it's that FND at fndusa.org. And that is who we are. So I know we had a real small group today, but I always act as if, the build it and they will come. We will be putting this out on the social media as usual. Vivian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so let me hit stop record just in case anybody wants